Welcome to today's webinar. We feel like this is a very timely webinar, especially with all the supply and demand planning issues that are out there, that we would show you how the S2K supply and demand planning system can be used to not only help you automate purchasing decisions, but also help you react to any delays in shipping or opportunities that you may have with certain products, and how you can react to some of those opportunities or issues that you may be having in the supply and demand planning system. So what I'm going to do first is just talk about what the benefits of this product are. And really, when you look at inventory related problems, you can look at four different issues, right? One, that you don't have enough products, one, that you have too much product, and then excess inventory leading to dead stock and decreased turnover and profitability. The second one, where you experience stock out of products resulting in back orders, lost sales, dissatisfied customers. And 3 and 4, meaning you don't know what's in stock. The on-hand quantity of your system doesn't match what's on the shelf in the warehouse, and you can't find material in the warehouse where you have it, it's out there somewhere, but you don't know where it is. Now, the supply and demand planning side of our software really covers the first two, right? Really, looking at inventory levels and making sure that you have the right product at the right time, in your inventory. The 3 and 4 are really warehouse management issues where you don't know, what's in stock, or you can't find the merchandise, and those are really covered with the S2K warehouse management system. So today we're going to concentrate on 1 and 2, all right? And I want to just take a look at the setup, because it really helps you understand how everything is pulled together in the S2K supply and demand planning system. So the first thing I want to concentrate on is the item master file, right? So in the item master file, you really have a couple of different flags that you need to look at when it comes to an item. So this is the S2K item master file. And the first one that I want to talk about, although it's not being pointed to, is the reorder style. If you can see there's an H, and the other option would be an F. So reorder style H is historical data, and reorder style F is for forecasted data, okay? So that really drives how the system will look at your demand. So if you have an item that's pretty consistent, with its levels of sales and with its usage levels, you probably would want to set it to an H, to use historical data as your basis going forward for your your purchasing, right? So when it comes to that, the system would look at maybe a seasonal average. If the item is seasonal, it would look at its, it'll determine if the product's seasonal automatically for you, and check, seasonality. And if it's not seasonal, it might, do some accidental smoothing of some spikes of usage that you might have. But it would take an average of your, months or weeks, however you wanted the system to forecast it, and give you an average usage for the product, right? If you say forecast here, if you say F, then the system is going to allow you to enter in a forecast for the product. Now, the system will help you in actually calculating a forecast for you, but the notion there is that you will be able then to modify or edit that forecast going forward, and it will use your projections for usage going forward for an item. Okay, so the nice thing about this flag is that it's set at the item level, right? So you can have certain products that you use historical data on, and other products where you use forecasted data on, okay? So that's the first flag. Over in the item balance file, what I want to show you is a couple of other things that the system uses as data points for suggested purchasing. So you can see under the suggested purchasing tab, there are going to be fields for lead time in days, safety factor in either a percentage or days. There's also going to be flags for average usage, suggested unusual usage, override number of periods for average usage. So there are other areas where you can set these parameters, but here is where you can override them at an item level. So as an example, you can set the lead time for a vendor at the vendor master file and say, well, for this vendor, always use this lead time, right? But in certain scenarios, you might have a specific product from that vendor that is taking longer. So you can actually increase that lead time here at the item level for individual product. You also can have the system calculate that lead time based on actual shipments. And the system can look at your actual shipments and see, what has historically been the lead time for this product, and the system can calculate it. So you have a bunch of options there. Safety factor is also set at a bunch of different levels. You can set it at the location or the product division and class, but you can also override it here at the item level, whereas certain items you might want to have a percentage or a number of days supply of excess inventory, and you can set that there as a safety factor in either a percentage or days. Okay, the number of periods to use for average usage. If the system does not see the item as seasonal, this is the number of periods it's going to use for average usage. That's a global setting that you can set in the system. So I have it globally set. I think it's for 4 or 6 periods. And when I say periods, you can have the system use weekly usage or monthly usage. It's up to you. Okay, so the system can actually use those weekly or monthly usage. Obviously, the more granular you get, the better the forecast is going to be. Okay, so this would be number of periods. So if I said 15, that could be 15 weeks or 15 months, depending on how you have the system set. Okay, override seasonality. If you know the product is always seasonal and you don't want the system to ever consider it to not be seasonal, you can override it here and say, don't have the system calculate the seasonality. I want to consider it a seasonal item or not a seasonal item myself, and you can set those flags. And you can see here, I'm having the system check to see if it's seasonal. Okay. Other things you can do is you can override your min and max, so to speak, your min or your safety stock level or your max. So if you don't want the system to calculate anything, here is where you would set your override min and max. Now, one of the nice features we have is to the right, we have actually dates for those to expire. So if you had a new product and you didn't have a lot of history, you might set a min and max for that product initially, but then maybe after 3 or 4 months, you would say, I want those to expire, and I want the system to actually calculate those numbers for me based on the average usage and lead times and things like that. Okay, so that's a nice thing that you can do. Okay, one of the new features that is in release 6.2, okay, is the ability for you to count the usage of this product towards another item. Okay, so this is alternate usage location item, meaning that you might have 3 different products. I'll use food as an example. So you might have 3 different products you buy that are all flour, right? And really, when you go to buy flour, you don't care what specific product you have. You want it to all roll up into one usage file for that product. Okay, might be like maybe 3 different types of cabling or wire that you sell, or duct tape, or whatever it may be, different brands and stuff like that. But when you go to order it, you might want to order it under or look at the usage under one SKU. So you can set that here, and the system will bring in that data into that one location and item. Okay, so that's a new feature. All right, another thing that you're going to want to check out here is the usage button. Right, so the usage button is basically where you're going to see the captured usage for this product. Okay, and you can see here in my demo, I am looking at usage on a monthly basis. Okay, if this was weekly, these would be individual weeks that you could look at. Now, in my demo, I don't have actual sales, so I actually keyed in an adjustment just to show you how it would work. But this would be your actual sales, and you can see the system. I know it's a little hard to see, but it's highlighted the months in purple that it's using for its average usage. So in my system, I set up to use a 4-month average. If the product is not seasonal, to use a 4-month average. So that's what it's doing. Okay, and it's basically looking at the 4 months that I keyed in an adjustment for, and projecting actual usage. So there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes. the system is looking at trend percentage. Is this item on an upsell, a downsell? There's a lot of different mathematical formulas that are going into consideration here when it makes this projected daily average of 24 cases for this. Okay. One of the things it does do is it looks at usage comparison to see if the item is seasonal. Okay. So it'll go back in time to 2/21 of last year, and then say, is this product in a seasonal trend? Okay. Typically what it looks at the overall usage for the period, and if that overall usage for a given period is X percentage of the total usage, then it would be considered seasonal. So as an example, you might say if any 3 months of usage is equal to 50% of my overall usage for the year, then I want to consider this item to be seasonal. And those are parameters you set in cross applications to help the system determine what products are seasonal and what products are not. Okay, so this is sometimes a nice inquiry too as well, to see you can do a side-by-side usage comparison. Okay, if you're looking at actual usage on this screen and you see a large number and want to see what actually made up those, that number, that's those sales, if you would, you can drill into the period detail, and the system will show you the order numbers that make up that sale. This is really good if you want to manually look at a product and see why it might be spiking. Was it one customer that purchased one order, for 45 units, or in this case, you could see it was a lot of orders for a lot of, single quantities. So it's a valid usage number. So again, you have a lot of access to the data here. Now, this only has to be reviewed if the system gives you notification of a flag or an unusual usage on a product. That's when you would kind of look at this data. Otherwise, the system is going to do its mathematical formulas and suggest for you projected future usage. Okay, so it's going to say for this product, you're looking at about 24 cases a day, 170 for the week, month, year, and that's what the projected future use is going to be for this product. And obviously, that may change and that may fluctuate based on actual usage that the system is capturing. Okay, so it's basically going to take that number of 24 cases, right? And then over on the item inquiry screen, under the demand tab, you're going to see it's going to take that number, it's going to look at the lead time, look at your safety stock, and then calculate for you an order point. Okay, so it's going to say basically I have 24 a day, 15 days of lead time, so 24 times 15 plus the 121 units for safety stock, that'll come in and around 487 for that product for its order point. Okay, so right now you could also see that at 145, I am below the order point. I only have about a 5-day supply left on this product, and the system is suggesting for me to bring in 709 cases, which would bring me up to a 29-day supply. Okay, so right on the inquiry screen, you can see this stuff happening real time. All right, you can actually click on any of the numbers here and do analysis, and it would show you the math if you were curious about the math. Okay, so you're going to see that later on when we get to the suggested purchasing system, but this is available to you right on the inquiry screen if you want to see it. Okay, all right, so let's look at the other way that the system calculates the usage of a product, and that's through using forecasting. Okay, so if you set the item to an F, meaning I want to use a system forecast for the item, then you're going to come over to sales analysis, and under sales forecasting, you're going to be able to enter in a scheduled forecast. And you can create multiple schedules, right? You might have a primary forecast. You might have a forecast if things are good, a forecast if things are not good, so you can switch between your different forecasts if you like, all right? And then when you select the forecast, the system's going to prompt you for how do you want to enter in this forecast data. Okay, you have to, at a bare minimum, enter in forecast data by item and location, but you could also say, I'd like to enter it by customer item and location, or by customer class item and location, or sales rep by item, by location. So you have a bunch of options here. And customer has been pretty popular because, what you can do here is, let's say you lose a customer, right? You can actually go into the sales forecast and say, well, what would happen if this customer didn't buy anymore, or reduce their sales by 10% or 20%? How does that affect my my forecast? So you can do it at a customer by customer level. You can also enter in maybe something that that's positive on the customer side. Maybe the customer is running some type of promotion, or you're doing a promotion and you want to say, across the board, or for these specific customers, raise my sales by 10%, and it will do it across that, all the items for that customer. So you have a bunch of different options here that you'd like to use for forecasting. Up on the top, again, you select your forecast interval, either monthly or weekly, and you can put in how many periods do you want the system to project for you and allow you to enter in that data. Okay, so you come over here, you go into create update forecast, which would be the next option. You basically just run this, and the system will look at historical data and generate a forecast going forward for you. So just like the historical option that we just saw, the system will look at historical data to generate a forecast for you. But the difference here is you're going to be able to modify that forecast going forward and make, and edit and put in your own, projections. Okay, so that's what the major difference is. So when you come in here, you can see now, if you want to, look at it, you can look at it a bunch of different ways. You can look at it, just at the location and item level and see all the customers consolidated, or you can look at the location, customer, and item level and see the details. Okay, so I went in here and I looked at the item across all customers, and I said, okay, let me just see what the system, looked at as far as historical data and what the system calculated for me going forward. Okay, so the system actually does look at this information and makes a calculated forecast for you for the upcoming months so that you can adjust it if you'd like. Okay, now what's nice about this is it uses a lot of high-end mathematical formulas to come up with this calculated forecast. The visualization on this probably explains it the best. And basically what you're seeing here is that when I click on the graph icon, the system will show you this is the actual data in blue, and the orange line is what the system is forecasting for you. And it basically, based on the data and the mean square deviation from the plot points, it's basically saying that the simple exponential smoothing method for this item gives me the most accurate forecast going forward. Okay. In other cases, you might have a very seasonal type item, and you might see that the system selected the Holtz winter method with for forecasting. So there's, I think, about 5 or 6 different mathematical formulas that it reviews to check the deviations and make its recommendation. Okay. You can also go back and change the forecast method here if you want to see how the other methods plotted against your actual data. So you can look at that, but this graph will give you a nice visual on that. So you can see it's basically kind of, you're going to continue. It's almost a linear growth in this item, and it thinks the system is basically saying it looks like you're going to grow, like this. Okay, and then the benefit of this is that you can go in and make changes, right? So if you wanted to, you can go in for any particular item, even down to the customer level. So now I went into that same, same forecast, but I went down to the customer level, and I said, I know that this customer in November is going to buy 100 more units, or I'm projecting 100 more units for this customer. Okay, so what'll happen is if you enter any specific customer forecast, either up or down, it'll roll up into that item forecast that you saw before, so that the system will use any specific customer forecast for the overall item forecast. Okay, so that's how the system can also generate and use the use the data for the average usage. Okay, all right, so let's take a look now. Now that we have the average usage, whether it is through the historical data or the forecasted data, that let's take a look at how the system now will create a suggested purchase order. Okay, so where this application is under purchasing, under suggested purchase orders. The first option you're going to run is create purchase suggestion. All right, and there's some new options here. One of the new options I want to show you in 6.2 is the look ahead days. Okay, so what the system can do for you is when you have different types of demand that you may have put a purchase order in for. Let me give you an example of this. It's probably better to give you an example. Let's say you put a purchase order in for 1,000 units, and then the shipment's coming in December. Okay, it's an overseas shipment, right? And you say, okay, well, based on my demand, I found out that shipment's not coming in right now. So I don't want the system to look ahead any further than X when looking at my current position on the item. So basically what you're going to say to the system is, don't look ahead past let's say this September. So if I have an incoming purchase order, don't consider that in my current buying requirements. So we saw this play out a lot of times when people were having delays in overseas shipments, right? So if they were buying or importing product and they had a purchase order out there, our system would think that they had they have already ordered enough stock, and would tell the end users, don't buy any more because you have a big purchase order coming in December. Okay, you don't need any more. All right. So a lot of our customers said, well, I may not, I don't know when that purchase order in December may be coming in. So I want to see what my immediate demand is right now. So don't look ahead too far when, creating the suggested purchase order. All right. So that's a new feature, and that's only in 6.2. Okay. So bottom line is, I'm not going to get into too much detail here today, but you run create suggested purchase order. And then what will happen is you'll come over to your suggested purchasing manager screen, and the system will now show you what vendors you have to buy from. Okay. And you can come into the screen by buyer. So if you're a buyer and you're only, assigned to specific vendors or specific items within a vendor, you're only going to see, those vendors and those items within the vendor that you buy. Okay. All right. And what you're seeing here is, let me go through some of the fields that on the one we've highlighted, ABC Corporation. What the system found is that item has 5 items, that vendor has 5 items, that are below the order point, BOP, below order point. And one of them is actually on back order situation. That vendor also supplies 29 total items for us, okay? But 5 right now are below their order point, okay? To the right, you're going to look at 2 fields, one of them called the short buy and one of them called the total buy. What the short buy is what you actually need right now based on for those 5 items. All right, using mathematical calculations, what is going to be your total PO for what you need right now? Your total buy takes into consideration any possible warehouse transfers that could reduce your buy for that product. So very typical, as you can see, that my total buy might be less than what I actually need, because I might have an overstock situation that will allow me to transfer inventory from one location to another. Okay, so that's the difference between those 2 fields. The other thing too is if you have a vendor target set that you always have to hit a certain dollar or cube or weight, the total buy will also factor that in. So in that case, you might see a higher number than short buy if you were trying to also hit a target. Okay, so that's what that number is. And how this screen works is basically you would come in here and you would click on that vendor. The system will show you any internal messages that might be in the vendor master file. Okay, so just some notes from the vendor master file. And then by hitting enter, it's going to display all the items from that vendor. Okay. And you can, look at, each individual item and see what needs to be purchased. And you can see that the system had made suggestions for me for the 5 items that need to be, reordered at this time. Okay. So I'm seeing exactly what I need to see as far as items that need to be, reordered. Now, my demo had some, demo data in here, so I'm seeing some additional items. But up here, you can see, you can filter out that says, show me items that are just below their order point, or just have suggested quantities, or show me all, meaning show me all 29 products, from the vendor. Okay, so you can filter this screen. And basically how this works is this. So there's a lot of data to the right and to the left. I think I show you that. Let me just see what happens in the PowerPoint. No, I don't. But you can roll right and left, and you can see some of the additional data points for each item. But you can see what the system's saying here is that you have this much on hand, this much committed. Here's your current available, which is only a 6-day supply based on that average usage, right? And because of those numbers, this is what I am suggesting you to buy, okay, of that product. Okay. And what a buyer would do here is a buyer would double click and drill into what we call the suggested PO detail screen. All right. And this is available in 6.2, the new suggested PO detail screen. So let me show you that. So you would double click it. Oops, I forgot I'm in a PowerPoint here. And that would take you into the suggested PO detail screen, which shows you all of the different data points for this item. Right. And here's where you can really analyze and say, why is the system telling me to bring in, 1,000 cases or 1,000 reams of this product, right? So you can see that first and foremost, right above it, it's looking at the demand for each one of your locations, location 10, 20, and 30. Those locations are all rolled up and consolidated. That 10 is the buying location for those other locations. So it looks at, your current position, right? Suggestion, what's available, and it's rolling that all up to a suggested buy of about, 1,019 units, right? Okay. So on any one of these locations, you can highlight, the little select button here, right? And look into the math of how it got to this number. So how did the system get to 709 cases for location 10? You would click on that button and then press analysis. And it's going to say for location 10, this is how I got to the 709. The usage for that location is 24 cases a day. There's a 15-day lead time, this much safety stock, this much order. This is your order point. This is where you are right now. And thus, because of that, you need to bring in 709 cases. Okay. On any one of the locations, you can also use what we call a what if scenario. And this is very, very important especially for products or vendors that might be saying, hey, listen, I know my normal lead time is 15 days, but we're not going to be able to get you the product for 30 days. Right. So you might want to adjust the lead time on the fly, not for every, buy going forward, but, just for this one particular buy. So you could do that where you click on what if, and you could say, what if I change the lead time to 30 days? What should be my buy? Okay. So you can do this on a product by product basis, or you can do it on an overall purchase order basis. All right. You can see all the different things you can adjust if you'd like. Okay. You can adjust safety factors. You can adjust lead time. You can adjust, daily usage percentages, anything to calculate a new suggestion for you. Okay. So those are some of the things you can do. And then right from here, you would determine if this quantity is a good buy, and you would say, okay, either I'm going to edit it. I can edit it by putting in additional percentage or quantity, or I can just override the total buy number and say, I'm good, return to the list. So you would actually override it and then hit select, right? So that you would say, okay, I am done, really just hitting enter. And you can see that the system will put it into the actual quantity. So this is what the suggestion was, and this is your overrided actual quantity you're going to buy. All right. And then along the bottom, we're keeping track of so far the total weight of the PO, the total cubic measure of the PO, number of pallets, units, and the total dollar amount. Okay. So if you're trying to, fill a truck, I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do that. One of them is just to look at your totals down here. Another one is to actually have the system calculate a full buy based on a target that you set. And I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. All right. So that's the first item. I'm going to jump ahead to this next item that we're going to buy, because what I want to show you is one of the things that we do, which is called a yellow flag. Okay. So you can notice that the first item was green flagged. And basically that means that when it looked at all the mathematical calculations, when it looked at the average usage and lead time and spikes and demand, and it looked at, maybe things like overstock in other locations, you didn't have any. So it was good to go. You really didn't have to analyze it too deeply. It was a good suggestion, and the math worked out. On this next item that I want to look at, you're going to see that it's yellow flag. Okay. So when I click in now, one of the things I'm going to want to do is understand what the system flagged me as something, as a yellow flag. Right. So I'm going to click on flags here, and the system will say, this is what we saw that I want to bring to your attention. This item happens to be overstocked in a specific location. All right. And you can see on the right-hand side here that in location 10, yes, I have 537 available, and I'm overstocked by 263 units. I have too much there based on the demand for that location. Okay. So the system's bringing that to my attention so that if I want to do something about that and use the inventory, all right, if I want to use the inventory that I have overage here for one of my other locations that need merchandise, I can do that. I can do that right from here by creating an overstock transfer, right? Or my other option would be to click on this button that says remove overstock and say, I don't want to consider overstock, just, buy what I need to buy. Okay. So, those are some of the different options you have. So I'm going to show you how we do an overstock transfer. So now that I have 263 over, let me see if I can move any of those to my other location. So I would click on this, right? And it would say, this is how much you totally have available in that location, and this is how much overstock. Do you want to move any of those, either the full quantity or overstock quantity, to one of the other locations? Location 20 or 30. Do you want to do a transfer? Okay. And what this will do, I'm not going to go into too deep here, but this would actually create a suggested warehouse transfer that will show up in the warehouse transfer program in S2K Warehouse Management. Okay. That obviously then could be picked and shipped and, transferred to another location. Okay. So I don't exactly remember what I did. I think I gave the whole quantity to location 20. So now it's saying you don't have to buy anything for that, for location 20. All right. Now you're just left with buying, one here and 54 here, and a total of 55 units is your balance now that you did that transfer. And I could say that looks good. I'm ready to go. And you can see that again, it would say, based on the edits you made, it's only recommending 55, and I accepted that, and I, going to actually buy 55. Okay, so that's one of the yellow stocks for an overstock. Let's look at this third item, and I'll show you something new also that's in, I think it's in 6.1 and 6.2 of S2K, which is what we call a forward buy. All right, so I'm going to click on this, 920. All right, and again, I can look at my suggested buys by location. So in location 30, you can see I have no sales and I have 5 units. So it's really saying here, you don't have any sales in that location for this product. You could conceivably move the 5 out of there. But what I want to show you here is the forward buy option that was added, I think, in release 6.1 and 6.2. Okay. And what the forward buy is the ability for you to put in a price increase or promo or something, either dollar or percentage, and then have the system tell you what would be the optimum buy in cost savings for buying ahead on this product, forward buying. Okay. So let's say hypothetically the vendor says, hey, we're going to have a 2% price increase on this product. So do you want to buy any extra? Right. So what the system does, and I'm not going to get too deep into the math, but it looks at your carrying cost of this item, and obviously it will go through, and then your net savings will begin to get be positive, but then eventually it'll flip and say, well, by carrying this much, now you're getting into your savings gets to be negative, okay, or starts to diminish. Right. So your optimum buy here would be at your peak level, and it highlights it for you, which would be 1166 if you had a price increase of this, or if they're offering you some kind of promo discount. It really just helps you with understanding an optimum quantity based on a price increase or discount that might be available. Okay, so if I said this looks good, yeah, I want to do this 1166 versus the 920, I would just hit apply the suggestion, and it's going to change and round it out for me and say 1167 is the the quantity that you should be purchasing based on a forward buy. Okay, and again, I can override that or I can accept it, and I hit enter, and now my total PO is shaping up to be what I have down here. Okay, so you can see that a lot of this data is available to you on on the in the drill downs of these products. Okay, if this PO was okay, I would basically now maybe just filter this and say, show me the items that I am just selecting so far for the PO, and I want to physically create my purchase order. Okay, realize that obviously if you're the buyer, this is a worksheet here. So if you saw an item on here and you said, well, I also need to buy this, or I want to buy this, or whatever it may be, if you were looking at a vendor's data, you could look at that and see all the different order points and calculations and things that the system is looking at for each product, and create the PO as you see fit. This is really just a great work screen for your buyers to work off of. Okay, but if they're happy with the PO and this is what they want to buy, they would hit create PO. It'll say, do you want to create a purchase order? You say yes. And this is an option we have in the system where it would show you what the individual buys would be if you were to ship the merchandise directly to those locations. Okay, so sometimes you might see that your buy at one of your locations is large enough where the vendors would ship directly to that location at that quantity. Maybe it's a certain weight or cubes or number of pallets that said, hey, if you do order that, we could create it directly. So what you would say here, let's say if 30 was big enough, you'd say 30 is going to buy for itself. You would change the buying location, and now the system would cut two POs. One that would go directly to 30 and one that would be a consolidation for 10 and 20. Okay, so you have some options here. Obviously, my two locations are very small, so I'm just going to roll up their requirements into 10. So 10 is going to buy across the board here. And I hit enter, right? And it basically tells me I've created now purchase order number 2692 for you. And you hit enter, and it's going to show you the purchase order. Right? So this is just basically now jumping you over into the purchase order system, right? And allowing you to see the header on the purchase order. You can see all the line item details on the purchase order. Here's where you could bring the item down and maybe change the cost if the cost wasn't right. So it's basically, allowing you to look at the purchase order one more time before, sending it over to the vendor. Okay. So if it looks good, you get to the summary screen. You say email purchase order, and it now sends it out to the vendor. Okay, so it brings up the email, and off you go. And you can see for the ABC Corporation, the system will flag you on your purchasing manager screen that you have created a purchase order 2692 for that. So you're done. You would go to your next vendor and look at the next vendor and products there. Okay, so because of time, I just want to show you one other feature that's really important in today's supply and demand planning situations. It's called target buying. All right, so one of the things you can do with the suggested purchasing system is you can see that the system made its suggestion for you. And one of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of times our customers need to buy up to a certain target, or they want to add an additional day's supply because of a vendor situation with shipping. So what you can do here is you can look at the the suggestion and say, I need to hit a certain target count. All right. And you can see that your target can be anything. You might want it to be an additional days of usage. So let's say a couple of situations for that. Let's say the vendor says, hey, listen, all my shipments are 14 days behind. So you might want to say, I'm going to add additional 14 days to my original suggestion. So I would get a new suggestion. Right. So I would do that. Also, sometimes purchasers, like a buyer, might do this if he's going on vacation and saying, listen, I want to make sure that my buy has, covers the next additional 7 days as well. So they can put that in there, as a new target. You can also set a target by dollar amount or weight or cubes or number of pallets or number of units. So if you had to hit a certain dollar amount, the vendor might say, your original suggestion here is 78,000, but if you buy, $80,000, you put $80,000 in there, I can give you a discount. You can put $80,000 in there. And basically what the system's going to do is fictitiously behind the scenes, keep on putting in additional days of usage. So maybe you might get a scenario where there's some items that weren't on the PO that all of a sudden pop up for you because they were close to their order point, but just not there yet. And then those items will show up and allow you to, create and hit your target. Okay. So I'm going to leave the 14-day additional usage. And when you hit enter here, you're going to see that in some cases to hit that target, it just increased the quantity. So the original quantity was this. It wanted you to add 400 more cases and get to 1,500 cases on that item. But there were some other items here that were close to their order points, not really needed just yet, but to hit that target, you can buy those now that, would hit an additional 14-day supply across the vendor line. Okay. So you can see how this works, very, very nice system for, hitting a vendor target, whether that target be dollars or weight or cubes or number of pallets. Okay. If you have that data in the system, our system will be able to make those recommendations for you for hitting a vendor target. And what you're really going to look at is, number of days added. So let's say I was trying to buy to a dollar amount. If the vendor said, hey, if you hit $100,000 to give you a discount, what you're going to look at is on the new suggestion, how far out did the system have to go to hit that target? So in this case, I used the 14 days, but if I was using a dollar amount, it might show you that, hey, I had to go out, 30 days of extra demand to hit that target. And then your buyer would have to know, hey, if buying 30 days additional supply worth whatever the vendor is offering me, right? Whatever it be, free shipping or whatever, is that worth, buying up to hit that target at this time? Okay. Maybe the target is a mandatory requirement. So, you would, determine whether you need to do it or not. Okay. So if this looks good, under the actions, you would say, keep target by, and then it would update all of your quantities here to the new suggested targets. Okay. So that's target buying. Lastly, I want to just show you some of the analytics and one of the analytic reports that a lot of people are using lately to help manage their inventory. And that is over in analytics, the fill rate report. Okay. So this has become a very, very popular report, and it's part of one of the many tools that you could use for supply and demand planning. We have other ones, but I just wanted to show you this one today. So the fill rate report, you can see, you can look at it by customer, by warehouse location, by vendor. All right. So you can look at it a couple of different ways. And I'm going to look at this by customer. And I'm going to be able to look at all of my customers and see, what customers am I not filling their orders, at 100% or high 90s here. Okay. So you can see on this one customer that I'm going to drill into that I'm about a 76% fill rate, and I might want to see why. All right. So I'm going to drill into the customer. I'm going to click on that customer. It's going to say, these are the types, divisions of products that they buy from us. So it may be that, hey, I'm filling office supplies pretty well, but my problems might be in, furniture or office equipment or technology, right? So I think I click on furniture here. which one did I click on? I clicked on office technology. All right. So I go into office technology and I say, well, maybe it's not all the, classes, it's certain classes. All right. And you can keep on drilling down. And then when you click on the next level, you're going to see the actual SKUs. And you'll notice here that really the problem item within this category for this customer is the electronic stapler. Everything else I happen to order correctly, but I'm not filling the electronic staplers based on the order quantities that this customer is buying. Right. So what would be my remedy there? I might go to the electronic stapler item and just increase my safety stock. Right. Bring up the safety stock a little bit because maybe there's some big fluctuations. That's why I'm out of stock in that item, and that might raise my fill rate for this customer, especially if this is a good customer. If you really want to, that's why this is a nice analysis where you're looking at your customers here and you're saying if these customers up top that have low fill rates are very good customers, you want to do this analysis to drill in and see what items they're ordering that you're not filling. Okay, so this is just one of many reports that we have in analytics to really help you also in managing supply and demand planning.